Kate Falcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. Um, Welcome to all my new subscribers. Welcome to returning subscribers. I'm really grateful, really appreciate it. Check out my Substack. Haven't been writing a lot lately. I've been pretty involved in other stuff, but you never know what you're going to find over there. And sometimes it's the same as here, and sometimes it's not. I will say that. As you all know who are returning, I've been trying very hard to continue to cover important events of the day without getting mired in a sense of despair. And with that in mind, I've been returning to topics that we've covered many times. I've been doing this for 5 years. I've covered all sorts of topics like near-death experiences, paranormal, ESP, telepathy, famous psychics, all sorts of philosophy having to do with that sort of thing, psychology that relates to it, Carl Jung, for example. Edgar Casey. We've had all kinds of interesting people come and join us for a little talk, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm also trying, I'm sorry, when I start doing this, my nose starts to itch. That means we're on to something hot here. In the interest of not getting people too depressed, I've tried to find things that are entertaining, and that's a little harder. But you all seem to really like the sessions that I do with Deborah Lupien, voice of the Akashic Records. I will tell you the story about somebody famous, and then the two of us will get together and she tries to access information. I ask the questions, she gets the answers. And it's been very popular. People have really enjoyed it. I'm always on the lookout for somebody to do. And I've taken suggestions. I've done some people that you guys have suggested. And Deborah's always trying to come up with ideas. And I really was kind of at a moment where we record ahead, and I presented all the recordings we had, and Deborah's been on vacation. So we haven't had a time, I don't want to bug her, so we haven't had a talk about who to do next. And so I was sort of free associating the other day. I sat down to read the newspaper. Last person on earth who reads actual physical paper. And I stumbled on an article about Kurt Cobain. Now, I'm from a different generation. Kurt Cobain was my older children's generation. My kids are spread out in age. My older kids were madly in love with Kurt Cobain. It was all about the grunge, right? And I will never forget the day that he died. I thought my daughter was going to need medical assistance. We were staying in a very cramped hotel room, all of us. 5 children, one a nursing baby, and my husband and me, because our floors were being redone and the air was unbreathable. I don't know if you've ever had a wooden floor sanded and, put varnished. Oh my God, it's awful. And everybody was getting, asthma and getting sick. We had to get out. It was terrible. And I will never forget that day, because that was the day that he died, or at least that they announced it. April. It was in April. So he's always been a topic in the background noise of my home, but I really don't know anything about him. I do, however, know that there was a great deal of discussion about how he died for a while there. And I don't know, I think I saw a documentary about it. And I thought, this is very interesting. Kind of a mystery, maybe. It's a controversy for sure. And then I heard nothing. And I thought, well, I didn't even think about it. It was gone from my memory until the other day. And when I picked up the paper, there was the information, and I'll tell you, I've got it on my phone rather than copy it. New murder claims reignite the debate over Kurt Cobain's death. So if you Google, he died on April 8th, 1994. Oh, so it was 4 children. Sorry. 1994. A lot of conspiracy theories, books, and documentaries. There were, according to some people, allegedly inconsistency at the scene. I don't want to talk too much about how he died because YouTube doesn't like the terminology, but this was a fate he took into his own hands. And he was only 27, which is, at the time, I didn't really think about it. I think about it now. Oh my God, that's young. So there are many theories, a lot of speculation about what might have happened. And he had had a lot of struggle in the several weeks prior, including hospitalization in Rome in March, which is why his name came up, I think. And so now it's been 30 years, and what's happening is new forensic claims challenging the official conclusions of what happened to him. And a private group of private forensic specialists led by a Canadian blogger and investigator, this group has published a report arguing that the scene may have been staged. This is allegedly, I'm just telling you what the news is. And their findings were consequential enough. They were put on the International Journal of Forensic Science, and the Seattle police, I guess this is where he died, say they have no plans to revisit it. The case is closed, but this is the controversy. Let's just put it that way. And that's why I decided let's talk about Kurt Cobain. I learned some things about him that were really interesting. He was more interesting of a person than I realized. So he was born February 20th, 1967 in Aberdeen, Washington. Not Scotland. Apparently there's another one. His mother was a waitress. His father was a car mechanic. They both were of Irish background. He had a sister, Kimberly, born 3 years later. His family was very musical. His uncle, his aunt was in a band. His great uncle, Delbert, was an Irish tenor in a 1930 movie called The King of Jazz. He was a sensitive, happy child. He was a talented artist. From childhood, he was more into art. He liked to copy cartoons. And interestingly, his grandmother was a professional artist. He began singing at the age of 2. At the age of 4, he was playing the piano and he was writing songs. He listened and sang at a very young age to Electric Light Orchestra, to Arlo Guthrie, to the Beatles, to the Monkees. He had kind of a memory for music. When he was 9, his parents got divorced, and this had a profound emotional impact on him, on his life. He became defiant, withdrawn, and in a later interview, he said that he was ashamed of his parents. He wanted a typical family. He wanted the security of a 2-parent household, and he resented his parents. He was angry that they got divorced. His father remarried. His father promised him he would never remarry, and then he did remarry, and this was very upsetting. Kurt actually moved in with them and lived with his stepmother and her 2 children and his father. They had another baby, a boy. He didn't like not being the center of attention as the only son, and he resented his stepmother. His mother was in an abusive relationship. She ended up with a broken arm that he was there and witnessed happen. His mother would not press charges. She stayed with this man, and Kurt's behavior started to disintegrate. He became insolent. He became a bully. Now we would look at that and say, well, this child needs help, right? He was taken by his father to a therapist who the therapist the therapist told the parents that this kid needs to live in an environment with one family, two parent environment. This is the problem. On June of 1979, his mother gave full custody to the father, so there'd be no more back and forth. He went through a period of teenage rebellion that was pretty severe. His father couldn't control him. He sent him to live with friends, and they were born again Christians, so I guess they thought, Jesus would take care of it. He did become kind of devout religious. Later, he renounced religion completely and went on huge anti-God rants. He said that lithium, I think that was a song, was about living with this Christian family. He later, as an adult, was not religious, but he identified himself as a spiritual person. He wasn't interested at all in sports. His father forced him. His father wanted him to, be a guy, right? That whole trope, and forced him into the wrestling team in junior high school. He hated it, so he just continued to let himself be pinned until they got rid of him. He was embarrassing his family by just lying there and not doing anything. Then the father put him in Little League, and he struck out on purpose until the team didn't want him. He had a gay friend, and because he associated with this kid, he himself, Kurt, was bullied and called gay, which was, a slur. And later in an interview, he said that he liked people associating him with this gay identity because of because he didn't like people, and if they associated him with gays, they would leave him alone. They wouldn't want to be his friend. This is very sad social commentary here, but this is what his reality was. So he had to reject the advances of this friend eventually, and he explained to the friend, I'm not interested in that, but they remained very good friends. He would spray paint God is Gay on trucks in Aberdeen. He was arrested for spraying Ain't Got No How Whatchamacallit. I have no idea what that means. He drew during classes, and he got in trouble for drawing a caricature of Michael Jackson. He then drew an unflattering picture of Ronald Reagan. So he was always getting into trouble, getting caught doing these terrible things. He met Buzz Osborne, a singer and a guitar player of a group called the Melvins. They were a prototype of early 80s grunge and sludge metal. They were one of the top 20 underrated bands from the 1990s that were considered worth rediscovering. I've never heard of them, but that is meaningless. I've never heard of anybody. So they may be familiar. I don't know. Osborne introduced Kurt to punk and hardcore rock. The first concert that Kurt attended was Sammy Hagar and Quarterflash in Seattle in 1983. He had gone to Melvin concerts, but apparently they don't count. He found his escape in the Pacific Northwest punk scene. Who knew? I didn't know. Second year of high school, he moved in with his mother again, and 2 weeks before graduation, he dropped out of high school. His mother gave him an ultimatum. You drop out of high school, you get a job, or you move, you get out. And she gave him 1 week. And he came back home one day the end of the week and without a job, and she had boxed all of his stuff and it was on the front lawn. So he ended up staying with friends, and sometimes he would sneak back into his mother's basement to sleep. I mean, he had nowhere to live. He was homeless. He claimed he spent time living under a bridge and wrote a song called Something in the Way. A bandmate later confirmed that he did hang out under this bridge a lot, but he couldn't live under there. It was too muddy. In 1986, he got a job at a place called the Polynesian Resort at Ocean Shores and got an apartment finally. And he often went to Olympia, Washington, for concerts. He had a relationship with a young woman named Tracy Mirander. They had a lot of financial difficulties. She supported both of them by working at Boeing at the cafeteria and stealing food and bringing it home. He would sleep all day, watch television, and do art. So it wasn't like he was contributing. She insisted that he get a job, and he wrote a song about it called About a Girl. That song was in Nirvana's, that's the group he formed, Nirvana's first album called Beach. She took the cover pictures for that album. They broke up, and he began dating a girl called Toby Vale. She was a punk zine. I don't know what that is, and I couldn't find it. She played in a band called Bikini Kill. He was so anxious the first time they went out, he vomited. He wrote a song called Aneurysm. I love you so much it makes me sick. He wanted a traditional relationship, and she thought traditional relationships were sexist. So many of his songs were about her. So we'll talk about his career. At the age of 14, so this would be 1981, his uncle gave him a choice. I will buy you a birthday present. You can either get a bicycle or a guitar. And he picked the guitar. He played the guitar left-handed, I guess holding the neck in your right hand, strumming with your left. I think, didn't Paul McCartney play left-handed? I feel like he did. My husband's into music, and I feel like I remember him talking about that. I don't always listen to this stuff. So anyway, he taught himself a whole lot of rock pop songs. After dropping out of high school, he formed a band called Fecal Matter in association with some of the Melvins, and it was considered a joke band. I mean, they fooled around. They covered the Ramones, Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, the originals. And then he created a band called Nirvana. After months of trying, he was able to convince an old high school friend named Chris Novoselic to join him in forming this group called Nirvana. Interesting title, and interesting, he considered himself spiritual, and I think he actually was, because they explored a lot of religious, Christian, Jainist, Buddhist imagery in their early work. For the first few years, they had very small audiences, and after a number of tries, they eventually committed permanently to a guy called Chad Canning as drummer, and they recorded the first serious album, Beach, in 1989. They then replaced Channing with a guy called Dave Grohl. Their first major debut was something called Nevermind in 1991. That must be the album, because it had a song called Smells Like Teen Spirit. They became the group that really popularized mainstream grunge. It has sold 28 million albums in the United States and 75 million worldwide. It drew attention to Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and alternative rock began to dominate the music scene. Nirvana became the flagship band of Generation X, people born between 1965 and 1980, with Kurt as its reluctant spokesman. He struggled with his success. He felt persecuted by the media and related to Francis Farmer and also Francis Perkins. So he began to resent his fans. He felt like they were too invasive in his life. He was anti-sexist, anti-racist, anti-homophobia, and anti-violence. He played at a benefit concert to oppose Oregon's 1992 ballot measure 9, which was to teach in school, public school. Now, this is what he fought against. This was not good, but this is what they wanted to pass, that homosexuality was wrong, abnormal, and perverse. All untrue. Nevertheless, this is what the legislators of Oregon wanted. He was very vocally pro-choice. He got death threats from pro-life activists. In 1989, he collaborated on The Jury. I don't know what that is. In 1990, he collaborated with Toby Vale, his former girlfriend, on Bathtub is Real, which was a project. In 1992, he collaborated with William Burroughs, the beat poet, I think, in a spoken word version of The Junkies' Christmas. He was influenced by the Beatles, especially John Lennon, by heavy metal, Queen, punk, The Clash, Sex Pistols, David Bowie, Lead Belly, the Melvins, Jimi Hendrix, the Pixies, Iggy Pop, and R.E.M., and lesser-known bands. He championed lesser-known bands, frequently inviting them on stage during his performances. He focused on music first, lyrics second. He thought the music was more important than the lyrics. But he would labor over the lyrics. So he was called a big pile of contradictions. That's how he was known. It's considered that he wrote his top half dozen most memorable songs after breaking up with Toby Vale. Bob Dylan said that kid has heart. He was as much involved in his art projects as he was in his music. He did a lot of collaborative art projects. He was fascinated with physiology and anatomy and cryptids. He was famous for the tone of his guitar. It's uncertain when or how he met Courtney Love. There are different stories, somewhere around 89 or 90. He evaded her advances at first. He wasn't sure he wanted to have a relationship. He said he was determined to be a bachelor. One close friend claims that he introduced them in May of 91, but they were together for sure by the second half of 1991. And they bonded in their use of substances. They got married in Waikiki in February of 92. I guess it was in a song that I can't read my handwriting. She wore Francis Farmer's dress, and he wore green pajamas because he was too lazy to wear a tuxedo. She was warned that marrying him would destroy her life. She replied, great philosophical statement, whatever. I love him. They had a daughter, Frances Bean, born on August 18th, 1992. Love was doing heroin at the beginning of her pregnancy before she knew she was pregnant. And you know, as a result, because it was known, in the first few weeks, Los Angeles County took the child away from them. as they investigated the drug use that was they considered making them unfit parents. But she eventually went back to her parents. Kurt in 1992 said that if he wasn't married, he would be bi. He said, and this is a quote, "I'm gay in spirit, but physically attracted to women." It's been said that he was a very feminine child who wore dresses when he was allowed. He said, "I wish I were gay just to piss off homophobes." He advocated for gay rights and also for gay bans. In school, he'd been diagnosed with ADD and put on Ritalin, and his mother took him off and put him on some kind of fad diet of the time. He had chronic bronchitis and undiagnosed chronic stomach problems that caused him pain. He had several endoscopies, and his assessment of his own condition, this is what he said, that he had a gut that was red from anger and screaming. He was diagnosed with minor scoliosis in junior high. In 93, he claimed he had narcolepsy and manic depression. There was a kind of significant family history of self-harm, 2 uncles. There was also a significant family history of alcoholism, and mental illness. In the year that he died, they were in Rome, and he had a breakdown during the show. He broke the guitar and threatened self-harm, and he went on to complete the tour. But then within a few weeks, he died. He took his first alcohol at 12 and his first weed at 13 and was a regular user his entire life. He was into solvents, LSD, meth, coke, heroin, the whole buffet. By 91, he was addicted to heroin. He self-medicated because of his gut, he said. But then he said that he had been determined to develop a habit. Friends said that he used gut pain as an excuse to use and get sympathy. They call it vomiting with a smile on your face. This affected his band and his performance. In 1992, the day after they performed on Saturday Night Live, he had his first near-death experience, overdose. Love resuscitated him. In May of 93, it happened again. He was taken to a hospital in July of 93, again at night before a show, and she injected haloxone, and he went on stage anyway. By March of 94, she said he had suffered more than 12 ODs. In March of 94, he was on tour in Munich. He got bronchitis and laryngitis. He flew to Rome for treatment, and the next day she found him OD'd in the hotel. He was unconscious and hospitalized. She called that his first serious attempt. After 5 days, they went back to the United States. In March of 94, she had called the police that he was threatening. The police came and took their and pills. Love arranged intervention for him. 10 of his closest friends came. He was furious. He had finally agreed to go to detox to a residential facility in Los Angeles. But before he left, he asked a close friend to buy a shotgun for self-protection. He'd been obsessed for months by a movie about Francis Farmer, and his attempts to reach out to local Seattle film critic were ignored. I guess the critic of the movie. The critic didn't know who Cobain was, and he ignored him. In April, he escaped the Los Angeles facility, flew to Seattle, and sat next to a guy who actually was from Guns N' Roses. And this guy later said that he knew something was wrong with Cobain. On April 6th, the band Nirvana pulled out of the Lollapalooza Chicago festival. There were rumors of a breakup, and on April 8th, he was found dead. They had an auxiliary building on their property. It wasn't in the main house, and he was found by an electrician a couple of days later. He left a note to an imaginary childhood friend called Boda. He had probably been there since the 5th. He was found on the 8th. He was only 27. There was a public vigil in Seattle of 7,000 people where Love read parts of the note that he left and distributed some of his clothes. Grohl said that the worst thing that was the worst thing that had happened to me in his life. He says sometimes you just can't save someone from themselves. Their sales skyrocketed. May 31st, 1999, his mother organized a final ceremony for him. A Buddhist monk was there. Their daughter scattered his ashes in a creek. Love and Miranda, the other girlfriend, were both there. And they kept the rest of his ashes in a bank vault. Love did. Kept the rest of his ashes in a bank vault because no Seattle cemetery would take him. I guess they didn't want to be trampled by crazy fans. So Seattle police have gotten requests to open in the investigation, and they get a request to do that at least once a week since he died. New photos were developed and some were released close to the 20th anniversary of his death. And just this last month, new investigation by a group of researchers raised the question again of what happened. There's highly mixed opinion of his work. He's considered a Gen X icon, a messiah, and a martyr. MTV named him number 7 out of 22 of the greatest voices in music. Local parks have signs in his honor. The sign that goes into Aberdeen names him. They have a Nirvana Day. February 20th is Kurt Cobain Day. His childhood home is now on the Washington State Historical Registry. There's a street in rural France, a community that's named for him. And that's the very sad story and untimely death of the singer and artist Kurt Cobain. And I will be doing a session with Deborah when she gets back, but I do want to put this out in honor of the time of year where he really started to go downhill. And also, so that everybody pays attention to this new investigation. And there is a documentary. I forget what it's called, but there is a documentary. So that's all. Thank you very much for watching. Slán go fóill. Slánte.